Welcome everyone to the Personal Rescue Podcast. Today we've got Dr. Margaret Gavian and Lee Vernon here today to talk about all things pertaining to first responders, PTS, health and wellness. And today's topic is going to be diet. The infamous diet, what we put into our bodies and how that relates to our personal health and wellness. Thank you for joining me today, Margaret. As always, love having you, both of us on, and we put our little minds together and come up with some pretty interesting information and data to give our viewers to hopefully learn something from. So thank you for
Yeah.
joining today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here today because this is really where I get to ask you all the nitty-gritty questions, given your expertise in nutrition and wellness. I'm not the nutrition person, but you sure are. So I'm excited to learn a thing or two today.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna dive into it and get into the meat and potatoes, literally, of
Yeah.
today's stuff. So,
And I hope
uh,
you're only talking about meat and potatoes and not kale chips. That's all I'm going to say on behalf of
we'll
all
throw those in there a little too.
first responders.
So
Yeah.
first off, want to, I guess, give the viewers little info on not totally pulling anything out of thin air here. I've devoted the last 2.5 years to school and getting my naturopathic and holistic medical practitioner's license, as well as a functional nutrition coach credentials. So I've been living and eating and breathing that, as well as having been a personal trainer for over 30 years. Not active in all 30, but it was enough to, after college, that was my specialty and major was kinesiology and sports medicine. I used that information and a personal training stuff throughout my career as a firefighter, helping others, helping myself. So just to know, let people know we're not making it up or it actually comes from personal experience and then been there, done it, and practice it. So
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I think sometimes people tend to think of diet and nutrition as like a siloed thing over there. And I know for myself as a mental health person and somebody that cares about resilience and mental performance, right? Food choices really impact both physical performance, which we all know, and also mental resilience on the job. So it's not just something, we all know we should stop eating donuts because we might get fat. It's more than just that. So I'm excited to dive into how some of these things relate to mental well-being as well as physical well-being.
absolutely. Well, you look at first responders. Uh, I consider us professional athletes. And when you look at the best professional athletes, where you take the NFL, baseball, hockey, football, all that stuff, there's a physical component to that, but for those elite athletes, there's, like you just said, the mental component. You got to have both in order to be able to execute your job
Yeah.
to its fullest potential and to be able to recover. Nobody ever thinks about the recovery aspect of our profession, both mental and physical. So it all goes hand in hand. You're right. It's we really do have to look at our professions, and I wish more first responders would, as we are professional athletes, and so we have to be mentally and physically prepared to do that job on the drop of a
Yeah.
tone or dime.
Yeah.
So
And not everybody is a professional athlete. I think a lot about the volunteer paid on call world, right? That they're managing a busy other lifestyle or desk job and they're in their 9 to 5s, right? So we know not all responders, even though we'd like to think they're professional athletes or it would be better if they were at optimal fitness levels or health levels. They're not always. So we're going to talk about some little changes people can make even starting today. But I'm wondering, Lee, if you can start us out by helping us understand some of the unique challenges that are facing first responders and firefighters also when it comes to maintaining a balanced eating lifestyle or diet. I don't really like the word diet, but I know we're going to use that today. I like to kind of think of health and nutrition, but what are some of the unique challenges facing first responders in terms of food choices?
right, and I agree with you on the diet. It's a lifestyle. Diet is just what are we consuming and they can be modified. So I'm with you. As far as first responders, I look at the fact of, we'll start with paid. Your full-time paid first responders, police, EMS, fire. To me, I think fire has some separate uh, issues regarding that compared to EMS and police. I look at EMS and police in many places throughout the country, they live their entire shift in their vehicle.
Hmm.
So the only time they get out is to maybe get a bite to eat or to drop off a patient or to, book somebody. Otherwise, you're sitting in that vehicle for 8 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. Fire, on the other hand, typically we're in stations, so we have more downtime. And I think it provides a different quandrum of issues for both. But I think if we wanted to lump it as a whole, some of the big things we look at is the call volume. How busy are you, and do you actually have the time to eat your regular meals throughout your shift? Or are you at such a busy place in the city that you're lucky to even get a bite in and you're living off of caffeine and junk?
Or the
Um,
snacks you pick up at the hospital on your way out or back to the rig, right? So,
yeah, and that's the really most bizarre. When you open the refrigerator at the hospital, when we drop off patients, it's full of garbage.
mhm.
It's processed foods and just junk. So,
Or
yeah,
granola bars,
those
right? Like granola
yeah,
bars.
processed granola bars with
Right.
horrible stuff in it.
Yeah.
Whereas the station, it's a little different in that we're not typically as busy unless you're, something major going on. But that food choice that I really like to focus on is, for police and EMS, they don't have a lot of great choices when they're out and about. Fire, you have the other issue of you're feeding or you're living with multiple people. And I know where I came from, we had what was called a wagon where, we would cook for everybody that was
Mhm.
there for that shift. So you have different palates that you're trying to appease. You also have the fact of most people are not knowledgeable enough when it comes to the food and the quality of food and what that food does. And so you have the same poor choices that go on because they'll go to the store and go, you know what, I'm just going to buy the cheapest, easiest stuff, and that's what you're consuming. Or even worse, you have more of an abundance of poor choices at the station. You're sitting around getting bored, and it leads to snacking.
Mm.
Due to boredom a lot of times. And so
Yeah.
the food in the station is not necessarily any better than what you're faced to if you're working the streets out
Yeah.
of a
Even though
vehicle.
we
So
see firefighters in and out of grocery stores, and we think, oh, well, they can buy a salad, but that's not always happening. And salads aren't always the answer. Um, but, or at least in some of the departments I'm in, they've got members of the community dropping off treats, like as thank yous, as
oh yeah.
wonderful appreciation, firefighter appreciation. Here's some Christmas cookies. Here's some brownies. Thank you for serving our community. Here's some bagels. And I know here's our Halloween candy, right? So,
Yes.
every time I've wanted to bring something to a department, and if it has been kind of a sweet treat, I've learned now not to do that because they all roll their eyes and they're like, please no.
Yeah, no, it is. And I can't tell you how many times stuff was brought off at the station and just didn't get ate because we knew, or it depends on the shift. You got some people that are like, I will eat that all day and they'll take it home.
Yeah.
And it shows in their physical and mental performance, whereas others are like, I'm not putting that in my body. So yeah, it stinks because you don't want to be rude. And we appreciate the fact that those individuals went to such lengths to, they thought of us and wanted to thank us. At the same time, they don't understand that. Again, always go back to professional athletes. Our bodies are, we really got to take care of them because of the stress we put them under. So that's one of those definite things too. Police and fire, or EMS and fire may EMS and police may not necessarily see as much of that, but you go into just about any fire station and there's usually stuff that's not the best for sitting on the table that's been dropped off or donated. So And those lead to those issues of, it's a multifaceted issue. I look at it as looking at the quality of food. What are you buying at the grocery store? And most of it, I'll tell you, is not organic. That from what I have seen and experienced in my career, you get to the snacky stuff. You get to what people bring from home. Maybe they don't agree with said dietary lifestyle at the station, so they may bring other things in abundance. And then next thing you know, you find yourself eating that.
Mm,
We're looking at the quality of foods too. What is it made up of, and what is it doing? Are we taking in a bunch of sweets and sugars and carbs that are not going to do us any good, or caffeine because you're out and about all day? So we're just living
right.
off of coffee. So, that nutritional factor of breaking everything down, of what we put into the body, truly does, it gets broken down, and it's going to do one of two things. It's going to fuel your body and keep it lean, mean, and ready to go on the drop of a dime, and be able to mentally compensate and handle the stress of that job, physically and mentally. Or are you going to eat junk that causes this up and down cycle of mood swings, anxiety, exacerbates depression if somebody's dealing with that, to just feeling lethargic, weight gain, cancer? I mean, we all know this now. You look around at it's unfortunate that in this country, it's something like, I read just a couple weeks ago, something like 48% of the population in this country is obese. That's
Yeah.
unlike anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And then you add to it, I look at the fire department and EMS and police, and I would say, I would say there's probably pretty darn close, 50%, maybe even more, depending on where you are in the country, of first responders that are dealing with obesity or health issues, high blood pressure, heart disease, and stuff of that nature, diabetes. So those numbers aren't too far off. I would say it's probably worse because we're smaller demographics, but it's mind-boggling to see that as a first responder, because I know that we're it's a cumulative process that you really don't feel it. And then by the time when you feel the aspects of a poor diet, you got a pretty big hill to overclimb,
Yeah.
mental performance and physical performance, along with health issues. So hopefully we can prevent some of that moving forward.
Absolutely. So I wonder, can you tell me a little bit about how shift work and kind of the irregular hours that so many first responders work impacts eating patterns?
Yeah, you look at, I'll go off of, you know, I think the more complex would be fire. EMS and police is like, you get in when you can get in,
Yeah.
because you're living in that car. At the fire station, though, you come on duty, and there's this pretense. I was always told through my career, like, you want to make sure you're fueled up. So make sure, you've ate something, you're hydrated, because you don't know when that call will come in,
Hmm.
and you could be out for hours to
Hmm.
days, depending on where you're at and what the call is, like wildland and stuff of that nature, or disaster. So there is this notion of, well, at home, you had a certain eating cycle, especially if you've got, significant other and kids. You have a pattern there. And then when you get to the station, it goes out the window. And sometimes you're getting busy, sometimes you get in, and it's right at shift change, and boom, you got call after call after call. You may be out for the next 3, 4, 5 hours before you get back to actually eat. So your eating pattern is definitely thrown awry or off, working shift work. Not to mention, at home, you're usually you're going to eat and then go to bed, but then at the station, you're going to get those calls throughout the night,
Yeah.
and you're going to come back from a call, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm hungry, I'm snacky. I want to go. I'm going to go, like somebody said, oh, I got to go fuel up. I'm feeling hungry, so that means if we get a big call, I better go eat something.
Yeah,
Um,
because if you're tired, right? I know that is simply true in my life, and I'm not a first responder, right? If I'm tired, I'm notice there's a reach for food. If I'm had a hard night of sleeping, or right, you want something to keep you awake, right? Maybe you reach for candy, or you reach for something sugary, or you reach for something to kind of jolt you, like give you a little bit of fake energy,
yeah,
really. right? So yeah,
Yeah.
really affects what people are reaching for. And if you're up all night, your body's not supposed to really be up all night, right? So you
No.
do need, or it feels like, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, you do sort of need a little bit of extra fuel because you're having to do something extra. Is that
You
right?
do. And the bad part about it though is, your body, just like your mind when you're sleeping, kind of should go to rest to repair itself and rejuvenate.
Yeah.
Your gut does too. And
Mm.
so when your gut's used to your normal eating pattern, like, oh, okay, well, it's past 6 o'clock. I'm gonna shut things down till breakfast in the morning. But then you go to the station and you're up 4 or 5 times throughout the night, and it keeps getting woken up. Now you're feeding it. Now it's trying to wake back up, digest, process, then calm back down, and then you get a call. Well, I'm feeding it again. It's this vicious roller coaster. And so, really, on that, I won't even get into the depths of what that does when we eat in our gut biome and how that performs and affects stuff like our cortisol, dopamine, those brain chemicals that are there for us to sleep, rest, heal, compensate, deal with stuff. Now that's thrown out of whack. And
Oh,
so
right.
it,
So you're really talking about this roller coaster, just like this unpredictable eating patterns, and all responders, right? They're all a little
yeah.
different. And then there's stress on top of that, which is what I'm hoping we can dive into a little bit, right? Just the stress demands on a person working in that kind of role. And then because maybe they're up and running calls, or up at all different nights, right? It's really, people might not actually have access to or know what kinds of nutrition or foods they should be reaching for in those scenarios. So I'm wondering, if can you explain a little bit about how stress affects what the body needs in terms of nutrients, in terms of absorption? Just,
Mhm.
I think it would be helpful to kind of level
Yeah,
set some of that.
it's pretty weird. It's going to be, I look at it as it's going to start with a gut, and from there, it's going to be hormones. And your
Okay.
hormones can really affect your appetite and what you crave too. Those hormones, if you're deficient in certain minerals and nutrients, then you're going to crave things that are not healthy for you, like sugar, sweets, carbs. So we add that stress factor on, and you're up all over the place. That's what I noticed in the career is you would see a lot of guys gravitate to try to fill that need, and that need is usually a carb or a sweet sugar.
Yeah.
But I look at it, it starts with our hormones in our gut, and so as we increase that physical mental stress, that gets thrown more out of balance because I'm not feeding the things to help stabilize
Mm.
those key aspects. And so, what I look at is, yeah, a lot of guys will come back and they're going to get that bowl of ice cream, or they're going to get donuts or sweets, or just, I look at it as processed foods. They're going for a processed food,
So even
and
like a bread, even if it's like, I'm
oh
gonna
yeah,
instead a peanut butter toast or
yeah,
something. Okay.
exactly. And so,
Which
yeah,
sounds for
that's
many
what your
people
body is
like,
craving, but it's not what it really needs.
right,
And
because I think a
so
peanut
it
butter toast
craves that
isn't that
because,
bad, right? Like yeah. So I mean, we all know
so it's going
donuts
to throw it
are like,
off.
right? But
Yeah, and I think, instead of looking at the foods that would make you feel satiated and full for a longer period, it's not those. You want something that's slowly more digestible so you feel full longer, and it's going to balance out a lot of those hormones and your gut, and give your brain chemicals and stuff that it needs. So I look at stuff like more directed to if you're going to snack, or if you just eat your diet based off of good, clean proteins,
mhm.
meats and fish and chicken, to vegetables, to maybe a little bit of fruit, and then even more so good fats, nuts, and stuff of that nature. If I revolve my diet around that, then you're going to feel much better. You're going to have less cravings because your body's still breaking down. If you go, you know what, I just had some ground meat with some veggies and some jasmine. You got a little bit of your carbs in there because you got to have carbs for energy. but we're going to get something more substantial added to that, like your meats, your healthy fats, and your proteins. And that's going to be a lot longer process to digest. You're going to feel full longer. Therefore, when you do get up at night, you're like, man, I still a little full from dinner. I don't need to eat, and so you're not going to snack. I'm feeding those bodies those good fats, which are balancing out all the chemical stuff going on in the body.
Hmm.
Therefore, you're not going to crave the sweets and the sugars and the simple carbs that are going to translate to a sugar. So a lot of it does have to do with what am I putting in my body to regulate that disruptive shift pattern of life that we're going through. And the good part is if you can initiate it at the station on that, then it's going to be less, um, throws it off balance less when you go home, when you're off duty. It brings a little more consistency versus, hey, I may eat well at home, but at the station it's kind of, it's free for all. You're going this back and forth, and it creates those imbalances.
So you keep talking about hormones, and I'm curious because when I think about hormones, well, as a woman, I have a whole host of thoughts about hormones related to menstrual cycles and right phases of that, which of course we have female responders listening too. But
Hmm.
also, when you're talking about hormones, then I start thinking for our male responders, I think about things like motivation, drive, testosterone, right? That I'm doing air quotes because
Yes.
people have an idea of what that means, like, oh, it's related to our sex drive, it's related to our get up and go factor. So I guess I'm confused about how what you mean when you're talking about hormones and how stress and poor food choices are affecting hormones.
Well,
Like, are you
it's
talking about
gonna.
like how like intimate times might be at home, or what
Well, I
kind of
look at, for males especially, your T levels. We already know shift work is going to
hmm.
cause issues in the majority of males and females for that matter, testosterone. So when that
So
level
females have
drops and what you can,
testosterone, right? Females have
yes, they do.
not as
Uh,
much.
when I'm eating garbage, that is depleting and lowering that as well. And so from there, now I'm exacerbating that. Well, testosterone, I can tell you as a patient of T therapy, when before I got on it, I was constantly craving stuff that I knew that was not good. I fought to stay away from it and did a pretty good job, but then I started gaining all that weight
Hmm.
unexplained. My exercise and performance, especially the physical performance, went down. Found I was just more moody and grumpy. And then when I got on that, it balanced out. One of the first things I can tell you I noticed pretty quick on T therapy is my appetite increased
Hmm.
big time because again, those hormone levels are getting back to a normal state. And what I found there was it's just as easy if you don't change that eating pattern to eat garbage where you're kind of fighting that benefit of therapy versus eat clean and eat what you're supposed to, and you're going to accelerate and increase the benefit of those hormones and hormone therapy, which should hopefully in time with some people you can lower your hormone therapy levels of how much you're having to take because I'm supplementing with the good foods that actually instigate good hormone production. Tea's just one of them, but I look at our endocrine system as what's going to really feed the body and the brain, and that's what's going to bring on these so-called cravings
Hmm.
and eating pattern, destructive eating patterns. So again, I look at hormones control so many factors in the body. We really want to look at a diet that's geared towards supporting good hormone health. T's just one. There's so many different hormones in the body that are regulating all kinds of things that if we can just kind of collectively eat uh, towards a healthy endocrine system and hormone system, that's going to really benefit us in the long term when it comes to physical and mental performance.
Okay.
So
So that helps
something
me
like
understand hormones. Are there other vitamins or
oh yeah, we
nutrients that
look
get
at
depleted from these kind of jobs? Like, or any just high stress situations?
yeah, any like shift work we know for a fact. Um, that up and down, up all night, not a good sleep pattern, that circadian rhythm gets off. Vitamin D
Mm,
really gets depleted. Vitamin C, zinc, trying to melatonin and GABA.
mm,
Gee, what are those used for? Sleep. And when we're depleting those, you're not, there's a reason when you get off duty, you go home and you can't sleep still, or you have
yeah,
poor sleeping patterns.
yeah.
So a lot of this stuff is going to be depleted through shift work, gets exacerbated by poor dietary choices of what we put into our body, and then it compiles. It always, people tell me, well, if I just change this, that's all I need to do. I'm like, well, no, not necessarily. There's so much depth to the body on these little factors can have a big influence collectively when they're all working against you, or have a positive benefit when they're working for you. And then we have in between where we have some things good and some things that are off. So, I
Oh, I'm
look
getting
at,
overwhelmed, right? I'm
I
already
know
like,
it is.
crap,
And
just tell
so,
me what supplements I need to buy. Like my chiropractor will say things like B vitamins. And then I know I personally have found great benefit, and some of my clients have too, from taking things like magnesium. So it's like all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, you're talking about all the vitamins, and yikes. Like, what am I supposed
yeah,
to do?
I think for most first responders, where do we look at getting those? If we're eating a crappy diet, we're going to try to take like a multivitamin. And I'm like, well, multivitamin is not the way to go. You're not going to get what you need out of that. It
Yep.
doesn't digest properly and absorb properly. Two, where are you getting the food? If you're getting something that is GMO modified, and I do see this with a lot of patients, like, man, I'm eating my vegetables and this, and my food and my meats are clean. And the first thing I go, is it organic, grass fed, grass finished? And they're like, well, no, I'm just going to the store and it's what they have. And I'm like, I can tell you for a fact that the GMO modified fruits, vegetables, and meats that we have been genetically modified to the point to where you're not getting the same nutrient value as you do from something that is organic. And so that creates a problem in itself. I mean, we could dive off into just GMO foods and how
Right.
that has a negative effect on our endocrine system, our hormones, our brains, and our body. It's a disruptor. And
So there's
so I
two
go,
things you're talking about, right, that I've heard about organics, and also that our soil today versus our soil 100 years ago when our grandparents were living is different, right? It's depleted of
oh
nutrients.
yeah,
So whatever you're growing doesn't actually, it's not the same broccoli, right? It's not the
no,
same lettuce it was 100 years ago. But then also, and I know people have various opinions about organic and grass fed, and sometimes people think that that's kind of whatever, a conspiracy theory or something, like a marketing ploy. But when you're talking about organic, are you talking about the fact that some of those foods are sprayed with chemicals and that then we're ingesting those? Like what do you what's the
yeah,
importance
we're
of
ingesting them and therefore it's causing a disruption in how we metabolically process things.
mm,
We're deficient. You think, hey, I'm eating all that kale and spinach, so I'm getting plenty of, vitamins and B's and all that. And I'm like, no, you're not, because it's been genetically modified for more of it, and so it doesn't spoil as fast. And so something's got to give, and you give up uh, the nutrition content. Okay. And then
if
add to
we
the
all
point that
just
you're
grow
ingesting
our
a
own
poison.
food and hunt our own meat, we're probably all right.
I can tell you, as somebody that grew up in the ranching and farming in our family, there's a huge difference. And people can call it conspiracy or not, but I can tell you from having lived that lifestyle to living it now, and not living it during part of my career, there is a tremendous difference in how I feel in the way of when we go for organic, as much as possible, versus non-organic and GMO. It's a night and day difference.
Like
And
what do you notice? Because I think some people might think like, okay, well that's placebo, like that you just feel better because you think you feel better, right? Like what are some
look
of
at it
the you actually notice?
cumulatively. I'm like, I'm in my 50s and I have fantastic blood pressure. I'm not diabetic or anywhere close to, having to deal with diabetic issues. My weight is appropriate. My muscle mass. Now, some of this coincides with that hormone stuff too,
Yeah.
of things. But my muscle mass and body fat ratio is where it needs to be, and it's healthy. I sleep better. I'm able to deal with stress better. And so, call it what it is. I just always guide patients going, try it. Just give me 30 days and let's reevaluate. I have a process, a questionnaire that they go through, and we look at the physical, the mental side of how they feel and or performing. And then in 30 days, we reevaluate that. And it's amazing to see how things move from one side of the spectrum of I really want to get this fixed, and all we did was tweak what they're putting into their bodies, and they go to a reduction and
Oh,
and positive improvement on that. So I actually can measure that with the individual. I think going back to that original question, how does this affect our vitamins and minerals? Well, it's the fact you're not getting them when you think you are. So therefore, you are going to have to supplement
mm.
if that's what you're eating is a GMO or crappy foods, processed foods. At the same time, I know it's not just, oh, let me just take it and hope for the best. I like to actually do a little bit of blood work and find out where are you deficient, because taking too much of something can have just as a detrimental effect as not having enough. So I do like to actually measure things of where your B levels at, where are your D levels, ferritin, which is a process that's holding that iron in the body, where is that? Because if that's off, that can affect things. um, so I like to do some basic blood work to find out where are we deficient. And then from there, I can look at that and go, wow, okay, you're really deficient in vitamin D. And what's interesting is on a genetic side of things, if you have a genetic anomaly called MTHFR, that's even worse because your body can't metabolize things normally. So you may even have to, it's not just, well, I think the, FDA, don't get me going with them. Get started with you're only supposed to take maybe 1,000 IU of vitamin D a day.
No.
I take I take 5,000 IU and I'm still in the low level. I'm
And I
normal
live
but
in a
low normal.
place, I'm in Minnesota where we have winter forever. And so I take a lot of vitamin D, especially during winter time.
Yep. Now you have to make sure, people go, oh, I'm taking a vitamin D, I'm not noticing the difference. It's like, well, now we're getting into you need vitamin K, in order to absorb vitamin D properly and efficiently. If you're not having the K with the D, then you're only getting a fraction of what you're supposed to.
And I'm not a
So,
psychiatrist, right? But I know when I was working in a psychiatric program in a hospital system, when people were coming in really non-functional, like with significant depression and anxiety, psychiatrists were prescribing extremely high levels of vitamin D, right? And so I remember being shocked. I was like, well, number one, great, that's not a pharmaceutical. Number two, that's a huge amount. I wonder if people aren't just, you know, excreting that. But it was notable to me, like huge amounts were getting prescribed to
yep.
get people's bodies kind of jolted back into the land of the functioning.
Well, and you look at first responders, we deal with cancer, and so that's probably next to cancer and heart disease are our two biggest culprits that
Yeah,
kill firemen. Um,
yeah.
so you look at that and going, well, if you're deficient in vitamin C, that's a big one that helps stave off cancer. Vitamin D, your B's, B complex, A, K. So there's a lot that when we look at not just the mental side and not even performance, but the physiological side of trying to ward off and keep cancer away because we're already exposed to so many carcinogens.
Hmm.
I want to improve. It's about with cancer of improving your immune system. If I keep my immune system, right where it needs to be, then cancer should not be an issue. If I keep my immune system where it needs to be, guess what? That's less sick days and less times off of work because I get exposed with somebody with a flu or a cold. Speaking of flu, everybody thinks, oh, flu is because everybody's indoors and not out. Well, there's a summer flu and a winter flu.
Hmm.
There's flu that goes around all the time. The difference being why we see an uptick in the winter is, like you said, people are indoors more. What are they lacking? Vitamin D. When vitamin D goes down, your immune system goes down. You're going to be more susceptible to getting sick. So, um, all of that plays into the foods that we eat and take in. And so it isn't as simple as just, oh, I'll just go eat vegetables and fruit. No, you got to look at the source. Where's it coming from? What are you eating? How much are you eating? Diets that we will use in term, I look at everybody's body is built different. I can take the blood work and look at things. I can look at neurofocus panels of what are our dopamine and cortisol and GABA and all of that's doing. I have to take all that and put it in a comprehensive plan of like, okay, now what's going to work for you? Because the last thing I want to do is give somebody a a plan, a pathway of healthy eating if it doesn't work for them or if they're not going to stick with it.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm always like, there's this happy medium of like, I don't want to go extreme. If you want to go extreme, extreme in any direction is bad. I don't care what anybody says, it's
I've
bad.
heard so
We
many
need to
different
find,
diets, right? Like the all meat diet, or then there's vegan, which it's rare to find a first responder who's
yeah,
vegan, but or there's
keto.
vegetarian, right? Or there's keto, right? There's a million things to make sense of, and someone
I
will come
think
out with being like,
those
"This is the right way," or we all should be intermittent fasting. When actually, no, not all of
No,
us should be
and
intermittent
to me,
fasting.
yeah, no, yeah, intermittent fasting works for some and not for others. I look at A1C levels. If
Mhm.
your A1C is below a 5.1,
Which is a measure of
then
blood
you're
sugar.
not,
That's a
yeah,
measure of
blood
blood sugar.
sugar, and it calculates that average over 90 days.
Okay.
And so if you're below 5.1, you're not a candidate to intermittent fast. What you'll actually do is slow your metabolism down and cause you to gain weight. If you're above that, then you are a candidate for intermittent fasting, but it doesn't mean you need to fast for 24 hours a day or 18. It's everybody's unique. And so we have to go in there and look at all of those little pieces of the puzzle to come up with something that works for them and
And I'm
how they're,
going to
and I
do a
look at
little
it, how their body
asterisk.
responds.
I'm just going to add a little asterisk here because it's something I care a lot about. Like I used to do intermittent fasting, and then my doctor was like, you got to quit it, right? Because depending on, as a woman, depending on what
Mhm.
phase I'm in my cycle, it affects blood sugars. And I don't exactly
Yes.
know all the specifics, but my doctor was like, yeah, that's not for you. And actually, some of the research and some of the things I've read or listened to from various experts is really a lot of this stuff comes out on research on men and not actually on women. So
Absolutely.
some of what we know is what we know about men. But so that's just my little footnote. But
No, I agree.
you're talking
I
about
agree.
blood sugar. I'm wondering, how does blood sugar affect kind of our emotional stability, like our mental focus, our emotional stability?
I look at everybody's been, we call it hangry.
Yeah.
I'm hungry, angry.
Yeah.
That's a blood sugar response,
Okay.
to the body of I'm crabby, I'm worked up, I'm irritated to the other spectrum of that of my blood sugar is low, you're going to feel brain fog, lethargic,
Hmm.
sleepy, um, hungry, snacky because you want the body going, hey, my blood sugar is low. I want to raise it. So it's going to induce poor choices in foods. And it's because we're going that sugar, our blood sugar really needs to be more like a wave, just like an ocean wave. But what we see in a lot of people is this spike and massive drop. And then
Okay.
spike, it's a roller coaster instead of a wave. And that roller coaster is going to make you feel miserable. The mental side of things is going to affect all of that. It's going to cause inflammation. When we get these massive sugar spikes, that's that can cause an inflammatory response in the body. That's not something we want. We know that inflammation is going to affect mood, mental and cognitive states. It's going to affect physiological things, our bodies, how we feel, perform. So, blood sugar to me is something, what is the one thing we can do to minimize those ups and downs and keep consistent? For men, I think intermittent fasting is an option for some, and
Hmm.
it just depends on the person. For women, I'm like you. I'm not a big fan of intermittent fasting with most women. And so how do we fix that? Well, we pick the right foods that are going to not create this massive spike and dump of sugar or cause insulin resistance, which means, gee, my insulin is not converting that sugar into energy, and we start that process of becoming diabetic.
So
Um,
what would be like some simple snacks, like good for you snacks that firefighters or other responders could prepare, could have on the ready to keep things like blood sugar more stabilized? Like, because I get it,
yeah,
like, and we all know this in toddlers, right? For people who are parents, they see like kids having temper tantrums
yep,
when they're actually hungry, right? And I think
yeah,
we're all just big toddlers for the most part, and we learn to control some of our tantrum behaviors, but not always,
yeah.
right? So, what are we supposed to snack on?
I look at for snack. We're just wanting snacks. And some of that may be because, hey, we're working, doing a little something. So, we're using energy and our sugar dips a little. I look at fats, good
Okay.
fats, nuts, um, walnuts, pistachios,
Hmm.
pecans. You've got your nuts. You've got other stuff too, like jerky, like a beef jerky is just a protein and a good fat that's in
Hmm.
there. We look at options if you're wanting to do less red meat or something of that nature, then your kale chips, something that is organic and is going to feed the body, and it's a slow digestion process so it doesn't spike your glucose levels. It keeps it maintained.
Are
Uh,
avocados in there?
Avocados are fantastic in there, fish, especially your salmon, but I always tell people we don't eat salmon and certain fishes 5 days a week because we're worried about a mercury and metals in them. So you want to make sure it's uh, wild and not farmed. So your fishes with your good oils, peanut butter or almond butter,
But not like
sunflower
Jif,
seed
right?
butter.
Not like one of
Yeah,
those like
not Jif. No, I'm like or get the fresh stuff.
yeah.
And honestly, peanuts for some people can actually cause some inflammation unbeknownst to them. So I try to choose more cashew, almond, or typically my two I'd prefer, or a sunflower seed oil. So if you have the oil on top and you have to mix it every time, that's a good sign you're getting something good versus the Jif. You open it and it doesn't change
Well, it tastes like
because of the
dessert
process.
when I taste Jif.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
So
Um,
good oils and good seeds.
and I haven't heard you talk about eggs. I know eggs aren't really a snack, but I mean, I guess a hard-boiled egg could be a snack. But
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
are eggs good
Eggs
for us? Because they're, I know when I was growing up,
good. Not only is it fantastic for you on the side of managing, you're getting a good fat, but also the cholesterol portion of those egg yolks. That's what feeds the brain. We
which is
have to have
different than when I
cholesterol.
was growing up, right? There was the lore out there that you shouldn't eat that many eggs because you're gonna clog your
Correct.
arteries or something. Yeah.
Correct. Whereas eggs are actually fantastic. There's so many vitamins and minerals and nutrients in eggs. The egg whites have a benefit. The egg yolks bring a big benefit. So when I look at mental health and performance, I'm getting good cholesterol. I'm getting good fats. Uh, there's really nothing negative about eggs unless you're allergic to them. That for me, it's a staple. I eat them every single day. Usually, I like to, and then when we talk about a diet, I prefer to start. If you're going to have one big meal, it should be breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to load up on eggs and usually a meat source, clean meat source, and avocado or some nuts. I'm heavy, heavy protein and heavy good fats on that
So it's
aspect.
not
Less,
a you're not having toast or cereal or
no. And then you're satiated, and I'm like,
bacon.
man,
Can we eat
come
bacon? Tell us
lunch, it's
we can.
like,
Lee, tell us we can still eat bacon. Can we eat bacon?
yes, you can eat bacon. And
Okay.
I'll tell you, eat the bacon that's been farmed. properly, not something you buy at the store that's in that package that when you look at the ingredients has all the phosphates and chemicals in there. But if you get a good clean bacon, from, a farmer or a butcher or just your meat department that has or clean meats and
Yeah, so I
not
think they
the
call that, like,
package.
I see that at the grocery store says like nitrate free or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nitrates, phosphates, lots of, you don't want flavorings because that's usually some type of chemical. Obviously, the cleaner, the better. I'll just leave it at that. But absolutely, I'll eat bacon in the morning. I'll eat a sausage. I love to hunt, so venison sausage or something of that nature if I have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm loading up on that. I find then by lunch I'm not really hungry because I'm still full. The body's still processing that. I didn't get a massive glycemic spike of any sort, so I'm not snacky. I may eat a little something then of like, all right, add some nuts, maybe an avocado. And then dinner, eat a reasonable sized portion meal of it should be smaller than breakfast, but it's usually again going to be a meat, may have some salad and veggies with that in there, or veggies as a snack throughout the day, but I'll add my greens and veggies at dinner. I'm going to add a meat source, protein, and a small carbohydrate, a clean one, like a um, healthy rice like a jasmine, or you can do some of your, like a sweet potato. If you want to spoil yourself, you're going to get a little glycemic index in there on it, but it's a slower processing. So your broccolis and all that, but eat a smaller portion, but make it again good healthy fats and protein based, and the others are going to supplement. You'll find that you're not going to be hungry then later in the evening. But if you do get
So,
up for a
that
call,
means
then
like blood sugar stabilized, right? That's what you,
yes,
yeah. So we're not doing the like
absolutely.
roller coaster if we're having high
Yep.
protein meals, especially at the beginning of the day. Um, okay.
Yep. And now I look at too the patient itself. If you're battling with certain issues, maybe it's gout, then I'm not going to put you on a high meat. That's where like the carnivore diet and all these
Mm-hmm.
keto diets,
Mm-hmm.
they're not sustainable. Are they beneficial short term for something? Absolutely. Absolutely beneficial. But it's a short term to we're trying to fix something within the body. We get it fixed. Now I'm going to migrate you to a different type of eating lifestyle. If I had to choose one eating quote unquote diet, it's the Mediterranean. That's what we should all strive for. And what is a Mediterranean diet? It's clean meats, vegetables, and fruits and grains. That's it. I mean, we've known this since kids. Forget the food pyramid.
It's
Turn
not
it
burgers.
upside down.
It's not burgers every day though,
No.
right?
And no, really, no breads. If you want to do a bread, then a sourdough, because that's the cleanest bread you can get. But outside of that, stay away from your breads and stuff that are processed because of all that stuff. Just stick with clean meats, veggies, fruits, and grains.
And so I
And you
think the
do that.
Mediterranean is like fish and maybe chicken, right? That means like
Fish,
white meat.
chicken, lots of vegetables. Your seed oils are another big thing. I want to stay away from those seed oils, minus the oils I'll cook with are avocado. I know that's a seed, but it's a healthy seed. So avocado oil, coconut oil are usually the two I'm going to cook with, and then I'll use olive oil for dressings and stuff of that
Hmm.
nature. That's it. Those three. If it's not one of those three, you are causing inflammation in the body that is wreaking havoc on things. So I stay with those good seed oils, and those are ones that, again, I can consume and it's going to benefit the body. Good fats in those. Coconut oil, what I really like about coconut oil, it is one of the few oils that actually allows things to cross the blood brain barrier. So when we're talking about PTS, and you want to get more magnesium and certain things in there, depending on what you're treating with that, integrating coconut oil into your diet will absorb and get a lot of that stuff to cross the blood-brain barrier,
Wow.
which will benefit the patient.
I did not know that.
Um,
I love coconut oil because it has multiple uses, between like moisturizer. I can use it as like a body scrub. Um,
mhm.
it's delicious. And if I'm baking, I know we're not talking about baking here.
Right. But yeah, no, but
But I'll
no,
use that
absolutely.
versus, right, like a vegetable oil or canola oil, which I know
Oh,
are we're not supposed to be using anymore,
horrible.
which is hard, right? It's hard.
Avocado has a higher temp rate than coconut, and then you got your olive oil. So, just basing it off of whatever you're cooking and making. But I look at that of I'm looking at the individual. So if he's battling gout,
Hmm.
I'm not going to have you eat a lot of red meat because that's going to increase some things that we don't want. So I may go, we're going to go more Mediterranean, little bit of fish, chicken, more veggies. Let's calm those levels down. Gout goes away. Then we can start integrating back in our meats. You got anti-inflammation type diets of my grandmother's battling some stuff now, and she's like, oh, and I'm like, well, I'm looking at what you're eating. You're eating things you shouldn't that are exacerbating the inflammation. So let's just go to nuts, berries, vegetables, little bit of fruit, not a lot. And I want to try to bring that inflammatory factor down in the body. And then when we fix that, we'll migrate back. But
Yeah,
I
because
think
inflammation.
Mediterranean overall, with my caveat to that, is you need to eat clean meat, protein sources in there. Fish, yes. Chicken, yes. We don't want a lot of fish. A couple times a week, maybe three. Chicken, the other two, and then add in some red meat. I know there's controversies out there on that, but I'm like, if you eat clean, lean red meat, I look at buffalo, venison, cat, and cow as well. There's so many benefits to that, and the biggest one, when we're talking about mental health, is I want to feed the brain. And one of the best things you can do is get good cholesterol.
Mhm.
Cholesterol is a fuel for the brain. We have to have it. And so sometimes those meats have a lot of properties in there. And again, it's a balance of everything. It's not, let's just eat meat, meat, meat. It will cause issues eventually later on. It's a balance of things. And I tell people, mix it up, make it just something that I'm getting enough of this per day of veggies. I'm getting enough of this per day in some fruit, enough in my fats, and enough in my protein. I don't care how you get the source. There are some sources better than others, and we'll navigate through that
Mm.
one on one. But if I can collectively follow a Mediterranean with a little more emphasis of clean protein sources, I think that's the one we should all strive for, because there's nothing on a Mediterranean diet. It's like raw foods.
Yeah,
Notice the key in that, there's no processed.
right.
It's
So
raw.
like whole foods, not you don't
Yes,
really raw, right? You mean whole
right.
foods?
Stuff
Yeah,
that I'm picking up this and I'm cutting it and I'm cooking it.
right.
Not opening a package
It's
and
not a
and
box in
eating.
a box like the in the 80s when I grew up, right? Like everything came.
Oh, I lived off of it too. I
Yeah.
lived off of it
The
too.
ramens, the rices with their flavor mixes and stuff. Well, hey, so
Hamburger
I want to
helper.
back. You talked about something that I think is super important. We didn't spend a whole lot of time there, but I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more about gut health, because sometimes people are saying that that is like the new brain, basically, of how we treat psychiatric and mental health issues. So I'm just wondering if you can what do you know about gut health and how that impacts mood and mental clarity?
So the gut is where everything starts. I call it the foundation. It's the slab for the body
Okay.
that we're going to build that foundation on. So what we put into our bodies, food wise and chemical wise, can disrupt. You've got a ecosystem within that gut, and that ecosystem is responsible for breaking that food down and converting that over into allowing us to absorb all the good stuff in it that we want and use that as that fuel. It starts
Mm,
there. It's going to fuel, again, fuels the brain. It's going to fuel the cells. It's going to fuel the immune system. Our immune system starts in our gut. So if we're eating foods that are detrimental to that biome, then you're not going to absorb things that you should.
like
It's going
what's
to
detrimental? What does that mean?
I look at a lot of the pesticides and chemicals on a lot of the foods. You're destroying your gut biome with that. Your antibiotics, people that are taking antibiotics a lot or throughout their lives, will destroy that biome. And it's because, again, you're taking an antibiotic, it doesn't know any difference. It's going to clean out all antibiotics, good and bad. And the biome is made up of good and bad antibiotics, or yeah, in the body. So it's a balance. It's a really unique balance.
I
We
always
start
think of like a little garden, right? Like that's how I think about
No,
it. Like a little
absolutely.
healthy garden. We hear about probiotics and prebiotics and all the biotics. Yeah,
I
so
think so.
about
You
keeping
got
that
it.
little
If
garden.
I look at, depending if you're eating like a lot of sodas, soft drinks,
Mm.
alcohol, those
The
are all things that
sugar,
will
right?
just
That's what you're talking about is sugar, like sugars that.
sugars, and then well, alcohol too. Though just the chemical compounds of that are destroying that biome.
Yikes.
To the processed foods that actually don't have any nutrients in them, so the gut goes, I'm having hell breaking this down. So I look at the biomes. Yes, we want to look at probiotics, prebiotics, especially if you are, again, we've got some of the genetic predispositions to things, then the body's going to need help in maintaining that garden.
Mm-hmm.
I look at foods. We look at fermented foods, stuff like
Beer,
kimchi,
stuff like
um,
beer.
sauerkraut, all
No
that good
beer? Maybe
stuff.
we can. Can we drink beer?
Beer, beer actually, that's a fermentation
Yeah, I know. You're
in
saying fermented food. So
moderation.
yeah.
But I look at, depending on the beer, I look at some beers are better than others.
Oh,
Again, look at what's in some of that. So there is a fermentation process with it. But like with anything, if you're going, hey, I'm going to drink a 12 or 18 pack today, you're mitigating any benefits to it.
right.
One, with a dinner, kind of like wine. If I have a glass of wine with a dinner, that's not going to hurt you. It's actually beneficial. Yes, there's some sugar, but there's so many other benefits to that wine that I'll take that. It's when you go, hey, I'm going to drink the bottle or two bottles, and it's like, okay, now you've neglected. There's no benefit to it at
Right.
that point in excess.
Right. Right.
Um, so yeah, sometimes we have to look at, if you're not eating enough fermented foods to keep that biome healthy, then yeah, you're going to have to go to probably something like a probiotic, prebiotic, that genetic MTHFR that I talked about. If you have one of the five, then you have to actually supplement with a prebiotic, because with that genetic, probiotics aren't going to work.
So
So
like
again,
Greek yogurt, is that a thing that's okay?
Greek yogurt is fantastic. Um,
Does that mean dairy is okay? Like I'm sometimes I just get so overwhelmed and I'm interested in this stuff, right? So like
Again, look at what is in it, read that label.
okay.
And if it's, Greek yogurt, what's made overseas versus here can differ. But I know we have stuff that's coming from overseas, then just read that label. If it's got high fructose corn syrup and sucrose or sucralose and just garbage in there, then no, you're not doing any good.
Hmm.
As far as a yogurt, what I actually prefer is a coconut milk based yogurt.
Oh.
Coconut, it's going to be lactose free, so you don't have to worry about. A lot of people have an intolerance to dairy and milk, so Greek yogurt, that's out of the, not going to help them necessarily. Whereas a coconut based milk yogurt doesn't have lactose in it, you don't have those issues. Greek yogurt, or I guess the coconut yogurt, easily digestible. There's no really inflammation issue you're having to work with on that, unless you're just allergic to it. But I will take a coconut yogurt over a regular. I don't eat the stuff like Yoplait and all that. The big names,
Well,
that's
sometimes
garbage.
like they
Stay
just
away
throw
from it.
like basically like a cherry pie in with a yogurt, right? It's like
Yeah, if
I know
it's
this
supposed to.
tastes delicious, but I don't think I should be eating it.
No. And what it's doing too on those is, again, increasing your glucose levels. You're getting a glycemic spike, whereas a good healthy coconut yogurt, even some Greek yogurts, what I would do to those though as well is, if you're eating that, it's some protein in there, but I would add some more nuts, add maybe a little bit of fruit, not a lot, so we don't cause a glycemic spike. If you want flavoring, just get the vanilla. Guess what? If you buy a vanilla coconut yogurt, they're not adding all the other garbage in there to make it taste good. Just tastes like plain old yogurt. So add cinnamon. You could add maybe a little bit of apple. You could add a citrus in there, nuts, pistachios, walnuts, blueberries, stuff of that nature. So now I take one one little thing of yogurt and I'm getting a multitude of vitamins, minerals, fats, and good stuff, protein that my body needs. And that will help that last longer versus eating a yo play that's high in sugar and garbage. You'll eat it and then you're going to be like, I'm still hungry.
Yeah.
Or an hour later, you're going to be hungry for it again. So it's just thinking of that same methodology of whole foods. I want clean whole foods. I can add that to something that's, like a Greek yogurt or a coconut yogurt base. Again, you can play with things. I just tell people, read that label. And if there's stuff on there you can't pronounce, then you probably don't want it.
Right. And so if we just kind of focus in a little bit on the actual specifics of responders, for example, if firefighters are coming back to the station, they've been out for a few hours, maybe they've been in a structure fire, we know they're tired, they're probably thirsty, right? What would be your like, because if there was a critical incident, I have very specific 1, 2, and 3s that this is what should be happening after a critical incident to maintain our mental well-being. But for you, kind of in this nutrition realm, what would an ideal um, food or nutrients be
Mm-hmm.
after a physically demanding
Yep.
job on
Yeah.
ship?
You go to a big fire or something on nature. I
Yeah.
personally now versus what I did back then, I would change that up into hydrate, but not with just water. You need to throw a clean electrolyte in there that doesn't have sugar or garbage in it. At a minimum, water with at least a pinch of some Celtic sea salt or the pink Himalayan salt.
Yeah.
Pinch of that. You need sodium. That's a good sodium to have. So that would allow those molecules to absorb that water better within the body. So
That's like a
add
homemade, almost
electrolyte.
like a homemade Gatorade, right? Is what you're sort of
Yeah,
suggesting, but
without the
not
sugar.
Gatorade. Yeah.
Yep. I know LMT's not too bad. There's some different ones out there. Again, I just look. If there's sugar in it, stay away from it.
Okay.
Um, so electrolytes. I'm going to hydrate with electrolytes because we're not going to get that on the scene. Typically, it's just plain old water,
Yeah.
or they'll have Gatorade, which I'm just like, no, I'll stay away from. So we need to get that going again. And then from there, if you've worked really hard, that's like a workout, period. I mean, you've exerted and mentally and physically. What do you do after a normal workout? Gee, I'm going to eat protein and healthy fat dense meal to repair the muscle damage that was done while exerting myself, to give my brain the cholesterol and nutrients it needs to recover from and be able to, again, I worry about, I want to feed the body to fuel it. So when I go lay my head down, mentally, I'm going to start that process, that coping process of what we just went through. So I look at cholesterol's kind of something important. So I'd be looking at eggs. I'd be doing some eggs and some avocado. Um, I would look at maybe if you can get a sourdough bread, then add a little of that in there for a little bit of carb to get you some carbohydrates in to fuel the body. We need carbs. Going without carbs doesn't end well long term wise. So got to have carbs. So a healthy carb of some sort, whether it be some jasmine, rice, or a sourdough, eggs, maybe a little bacon, avocado. I wouldn't be opposed to doing a small piece of lean steak, eggs, and avocado, some berries, some blueberries. So you're getting
Mhm.
some of those cancer fighting entities in there too, and vitamins. So that's what I'm looking. I'm looking at basically a breakfast. I'm going to do a dense breakfast that is healthy and lean with the good stuff in it. And then you probably won't eat the rest of the night. You're not going to wake up later going, oh my God, I'm starving. Because if you eat a carb, a simple carb, cereal, pastries, and
A bagel with
garbage,
peanut butter, right? Like, yeah.
bagel and peanut butter, it'll satisfy you for now. And then when you lay down, by the time you lay down about falling asleep, your stomach's going to be growling. You're like, I'm hungry. What are you going to do? Get up and go eat. And
Yeah.
you'll eat something similar. You're like, oh God, it's 3. I don't want to eat something that heavy. You'll eat something snacky again. That again, you're just repeating this cycle of not feeding the body what it truly needs. So I would treat after a major call or fire or something, eating some lean meat, avocado, fish, eggs, maybe some nut butters of some sort, a little bit of a carb of a good grain, and call it a day. And you're going to be full. And you'll feel full, and you'll feel like you don't need anything else. And it's going to last. It's going to take the body a few hours to break that down. And you're feeding it what it needs to repair itself after exertion.
Awesome. So, what if you're in law enforcement or EMS and you're stuck in your squad or in the ambulance? And I guess what are some realistic meal prep ideas? Because the firehouse makes more sense. Like at least they can go. I mean, the firefighters I work with go to the grocery store together. They
Mm-hmm.
somebody's in charge of shopping and cooking for that day, for dinner at
Right.
least, right? Which is a little
Yep.
bit more controllable. But
Yeah.
if you're EMS or law enforcement, right, you've got to probably prep and think ahead of time because there's not a lot of choices when out there on the
No.
road, right? So what are some
Yeah. And even
what
at the
can
station,
you give us
I
some like
ended my
realistic
career.
meal prep ideas?
Oh, yeah. Easy. It's not hard. I'd even say, I don't know about up there, but in the South, what I'm seeing as a tradition, which was the table, the wagon, as we called it, dinner as a group, I'm seeing that die. And whether that comes back or not, I don't know. So what
Mm-hmm.
do you get? Now you get everybody bringing their own stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
could see there's instances where the firehouse is going to apply the same as if I'm EMS or police. And that's going to be you have to meal prep. It's that simple. It's cooking your chicken and your steak and your egg white, or I do hard boiled eggs. It'd be easier, but you're going to have to cook and meal prep, and from there portion size goes in hand with this too. uh, you can they make the plastic containers to where I can meal prep for an entire shift. Have, if you're somebody that wants to eat the smaller meals more times during the day, to, hey, I'm an intermittent faster and I'm only going to eat 3 times a day or 2 times a day. Either way, you can meal prep according to you and how you want to operate, and it's called lugging an ice chest with you. Um, I like to try to meal prep stuff, especially when I teach and we're on the road. I'll do the same thing. I'll try to make things that don't require heating
Mm-hmm.
up, um, that I could just eat cold and will taste good cold.
Like what? What are you
But
talking about? Like what's an example?
man, for me, I look at, and it's a little different. And people go, my
I mean,
buddy
I'm
who was a
sure your
professional.
eating is a little different, but yeah.
It is, because and my buddy turned me on to this years, probably almost 20 years ago. He was a professional athlete, literally football player, and I watched his eating habits. He was to the extreme to a point, but I asked him, like, why dude, don't you enjoy it? He goes, I enjoy it, but his mentality was food is fuel for the body.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. And if it is not going to fuel the body and make me feel good, I'm just not going to eat it. If it'll fuel the body, I don't care. I'll eat it cold, hot, whatever. And some of the stuff was questionable. So I look at going, I could take chicken breast, can be ate, cold.
Yeah.
I'll eat steak cold. That doesn't bother me.
Right.
But, you can put your salads in there, keep the dressing separate, or just olive oil and vinegar, and then you don't need to worry about it.
You're like a
You have to
chicken or
think
a
of,
steak salad. Is that what you mean?
yeah, steak salad to doing sometimes quinoa, and make it's like a Brazilian bowl of little quinoa, a little sweet potato. You've got your meat source in there, and then some pico de gallo and stuff of that nature that I could just shake up, and I've got a meal done.
Okay.
To dried foods, nuts and berries, those are easy. You can carry the bag of walnuts around, great source of pistachios. I could carry the berries in a container. You don't need to heat that up. Yogurt, if you're going that route for like a coconut or a Greek, to nut butters that I could just literally have some carrots or celery in a bag and have a protein source there, like a nut butter. Dip, eat. Hummus is actually one I'd prefer over nut butters. Hummus to me is far better for you. Um, so all those things are simple things that you just have to take. Here's where the problem is. It's the time and effort
Yeah.
to prep before you go to work.
And
So
sometimes I'm imagining, I mean, I know sometimes it costs more to pay for good food, right? So
it
some,
oh it does in this country. Unfortunately, if it's clean, it's more expensive. So
yeah.
that's where you can get into going, okay, let me look at sources of like a clean, like a jasmine rice or a quinoa. I can eat that and get that in bulk. That doesn't cost very much. If
Right.
you're looking at meats, I always tell people go to a farmer that raises cattle, and you can look and see and verify that it's being raised and farmed in a clean way without pesticides and hormones and grains. And then you can buy a quarter, half to a full cow. And that's, yes, it's a little more upfront, but when you price that out over the longevity of what you're eating, it's actually cheaper a lot of times than going to the grocery
All
store.
right. So if you're making like a
So
chicken and rice, or you've got, your side of beef or whatever that you've stored, and then you're making a nice rice, and then I don't know, like a chicken and rice and broccoli.
chicken and rice to even certain noodles, you can get some, I wouldn't get, you can get like a gluten-free type pasta that you can do pasta dishes in there. Again, with a little marinara sauce, and you throw some meatballs in there, and I, again, I will eat it cold. I've been hungry enough so many times. Eating cold does not bother me. But some people it may. In that case, you're just going to have to find good part about being an ambulance or a cop. You could probably find somewhere that has an oven or a microwave that will let you borrow to heat up your meal. Um, and they even make some stuff to you can put into cars to do some portable heating. But for me, I'll just eat it cold. It's fuel for the body.
Yeah.
Um, and outside of that, it's just staying up on your water and your electrolytes.
So
If
how
you
does
do that,
water affect like our mental state?
well, if you're dehydrated, I mean, our body's made up of water. It's primarily water, 70% water. Those cells that are responsible for the conduction of cellular activity, the neurons, the cognitive thinking process. Again, I need cholesterol and I need water for the brain.
Yeah.
So if you're dehydrated, that's why you're going to get brain fog. You're going to get crabby. You're going to get muscle cramps. You'll have physiological stuff that kind of interferes with the psychological
Like
aspects
headaches,
of
right?
things.
I always get headaches and I'm like, oh, I haven't had enough water today.
Headaches, or in two, depending how dehydrated you get, your kidneys are not filtering out everything, all the toxins that it should. So therefore, that's going to build, that will interfere with the psychological aspect of things. When your body is full of stuff that you should have peed out, but you're not taking enough fluid in, that can build and cause, issues in that. And that's kind of more in extreme cases, but um, I look at anything cumulative can start adding up when we're dealing with a multitude of things at once. So to me, yeah, hydration and salt.
Mhm.
There's no pain receptors in the brain. That's what's interesting. People go, "Oh, I got a headache, my brain." It's like, no, it's not your brain. It's the receptors around the skull and the vessels around the skull and the brain. It's not the brain itself. Probably the number one, if you have migraines and headaches, I always tell people first thing in the morning before having coffee or anything else,
What?
take water with some Celtic salt, a pinch, put it in there. I like to add apple cider vinegar too, just for an immune and gut process, keeping my gut healthy. I don't even taste it. It's a teaspoon or tablespoon worth, and a full glass of water. Down that, let that digest, give my body another 15 to 30 minutes, and then have your coffee. Because now you're hydrating the body from the get go. Because when you sleep, you're waking up dehydrated. You have not taken water for most of us 6 to 8, maybe longer hours. You're dehydrated. So start the day off hydrated. You'll be ahead of that curve.
Huh.
Going to some of the dietary stuff, what do we see first responders live off of? Energy drinks and coffee.
Yeah. Let's talk about
So
that.
that is, I mean, the worst thing we could do. Why? Because caffeine is a diuretic, so that will dehydrate you. So you're defeating the purpose there of staying hydrated with caffeine. Yes, we'll get a chemical stimulant, but then you crash. Energy drinks are
Not if
far
you keep
worse.
drinking them.
Yeah, and then you just keep getting more and more dehydrated.
One of my
So,
favorite one of my favorite stories, or it's not really my favorite. It was one of these ones that is like burned into my brain. Is I was supporting a department who had a significantly stressful event, right? Actually, something tragic had happened to one of their firefighters. It was on a Sunday. Everybody, command staff were sitting around the table, figuring out what do we do, what's our course of action, how do we support everybody in this process. And then one of their assistant chiefs walks in with grocery bags full, and it was like he was Santa Claus, and he just started dealing out energy drinks. And I was like, no. And I was watching, and everyone was like, thanks, man, thanks, thanks, thanks.
Yeah.
Or that another chief who had like a fridge underneath his desk of that was just his energy drink fridge. And I was like, I know as a mental health provider that I have cured more anxiety disorders by getting people off of caffeine alone.
Yep.
But if I say that in the fire service, people are going to be like, yeah, we know, but right.
No.
So just that, but I watch the energy drink intake and it is shocking.
So it's scary.
And then we're like, oh,
Coffee I can deal with.
why do we have heart problems? I don't know. Because we're drinking.
I've actually ran on patients that had irreversible heart damage due to the consumption of energy drinks. Once it's broke, it's broke. Um, the scarier part on that is I see, again, the energy drinks are addictive. There's a reason for it. It's what they
Yeah.
put into it.
Coffee's addictive, right? I like my coffee. Don't take my coffee from me, right?
Yeah, but I'm down to maybe two, maybe 3 cups in the morning. That's it. Usually it's two. Um, and I'm done. It's a habit more than anything else.
Yeah.
I don't even feel the caffeine stimulant with my 2 cups of coffee. It's a habit. I'll be honest. It's just a
And
habit.
actually, people say that. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter how much caffeine I drink. I can drink coffee all day. It's fine. It doesn't affect me. And I'm thinking, that's not actually.
No, it does, as far, especially on the mental side of things, because it's a stimulant for the heart, the brain. Energy drinks are far worse. I look at, you've got chemical compounds in that you can't even pronounce, and they usually have a dozen of them in there. And I'm like, you want to see? There was a study that came out a year or two ago, showed the correlation of stomach cancer, the increase in stomach cancer from 20 years ago to now, and it was astronomical. And I go and look at, what are we consuming? Everybody's energy drinks. If you pour a monster on a sheet of rusted metal and leave it for 10, 15 minutes and come back, that rust is gone. It's shiny again. So if it's eating the rust off of metal, what is that doing to your gut? Which goes in tune with our gut biome. We're destroying the gut biome. Again, there's this domino effect, not to mention the astronomical amounts of sugar that you're causing. So we're actually feeding the brain what it doesn't need. We're irritating the brain through stimulants, chemicals, sugar. We're affecting the heart and how its efficiency and how it works with the same type of stuff. They put it in and it becomes. I'm guilty of being addicted to them. At one point in my career, I felt the need. I would go in, and after lunch, I just ate a good lunch. I'm full. And an hour later, it was like, I got to have a monster. I have to have it. Yet I wasn't thirsty, wasn't hungry, but the need for it was there. And I could drink one and then be like, I'm still tired. Matter of fact, I feel like I could go take a nap, try to take a nap. Well, now you're so wound up, you can't. It's just vicious cycle. And for me, I recognized it. It was just like, oh, hell with this. I cut cold turkey. And
Oh,
it's amazing, the drops, the lethargic drops that we get in the afternoons went away. The cloudy brain fog went away. The irritability went away.
those
The
caffeine
up and
headaches
down.
didn't go away, but
Yeah. But I look at it going, I see guys drinking. Unfortunately, there's some people I see that I know some people that drink 5 a day, 5 monsters, the big monsters a day. And I'm just like, you are going to pay a horrible price for that. And that's what I tell patients of, we have a choice. We can either pay for it now. And the way I pay for it now is, yeah, I'm going to pay a little more in my grocery bill, or I'm going to pay for it now and taking the time and effort to make sure I eat a clean diet and exercise, or I'm going to pay tenfold for it later on in life through expensive medical bills, processes, pills to fix whatever's broke, and a reduced quality of life. To me, that's a no-brainer. I'll pay for it now in preventing versus the end result that I've seen thousands and thousands of times. So, if there was one thing in the fire or first responder service, if there was only one thing, they go, Lee, one thing you could eliminate from the fire or first responder service, what would it be from the diet? I would say energy drinks. If I could only pick one, to me, I think the energy drink consumption is truly an epidemic within the first responder community and military for that too.
Yeah.
And I think it has some of the worst harm that's being done to our bodies and brain.
How,
So,
so like practically, how would someone start backing off, right? I mean, we hear you went cold turkey. That may or may not be possible for other people, but how do you, what would,
wean.
is there a better replacement?
I say, yeah, we
Say
can do a
water,
couple of
no
things.
one's
It's
gonna do
like
it.
any, yeah, I'd say it's like any other addictive trait or habit that you have. Wean off, go from 5 to 4, and then in another week 4 to 3, 3 to 2, and then down to none. Why are you doing that? Yeah, you want to supplement that. Gee, water. Throw in some water. They have
No,
enough like.
I'm already bored.
Well, when I say, you get your electrolyte balance of if I've got to replace one, start replacing it. Here's the funny thing: you drink water, you're not thirsty or hungry. It's going to fill you up for temporarily.
Okay.
If you add a little bit of electrolytes and salt to that, then it's to me you're balancing out and having to compensate for some of those other things that they're putting into these drinks. If you start taking find out where you're deficient in, obviously you're taking these chemicals because you are deficient in something. The body is going, I need something.
Yeah.
So find out what you're deficient in and add a supplementation program to that. Maybe it's the magnesium and vitamin D. Maybe it's some more B complex vitamins. So supplement what you're deficient in. Usually, a lot of those needs and urges are because we're deficient in
Or
something.
we're deficient in sleep, which you can refer to our other podcast on sleep, where we did a deep dive into sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's
Um,
also what the deficiency is, right? I'm tired and I still working, right?
yeah.
I'm still
I
working.
look at another you could supplement. Green tea is a healthy caffeine. You got a little bit of flavor to it. You can drink it cold or hot. You can do an iced coffee if it's done right, but where we go wrong is when we start doing the coffees and you're adding in all the sugar and
Cream.
coffee make
Yeah.
crap and stuff like that. It's like black coffee is the best for you in its purest form if you can handle it. I like to add a little bit of ghee or Irish butter
Yeah.
to add a little fat to that. Add a little cinnamon. Done.
I was listening
It's,
to a nutritionist who focuses on women's health on a podcast lately and recently, and she was adding protein powder to her coffee.
yeah, you could do that. I've
Like
never
really
tried it.
good
No,
protein
no.
powder, just to
Yeah,
get that kind of high hit of protein, help that in the morning. But I
and
thought
I
that was
yeah. When I do, and I think fasting is good, but it's for a specific reason and time, and then you get off. Like
yeah.
I'll do 3 and 5 day fasts, and the only thing I'm consuming is water and electrolytes and black coffee. And in the coffee, I'm adding in that butter, coconut oil, and usually some cinnamon or something else. No, there's no cream, there's no sugar or anything
It's
else
called
in there.
like bulletproof
Um,
coffee. Is that what that's called?
yeah,
Yeah.
bulletproof coffee.
All
So I
right.
mean, yeah, there's all kinds of things we can do to substitute. So yeah, you want that stimulant with the energy drink. I'd rather you drink a green tea or a coffee to get the stimulant effect, but let's add some other nutrient positive things to that so you can, benefit from it and you're feeding the body what it's deficient in to reduce that craving. I look at energy drinks as like smoking. For some people, it's really tough to break. And others can just quit on a dime and not have an issue. You can run into, when you're drinking 3 to 5 of those a day, you will have withdrawal. You can get shakes. The number one thing I'll see is headaches.
Yeah.
They're going to be headaches. Well, gee, what is headache? Add that salt and water. That'll help that. But you're
Mhm.
really withdrawing from a stimulant, an excess of stimulant. So
Mhm.
you're going to have to go through a little of the of the withdrawals in some cases. I just try to, mediate that with some good dietary habits, and that'll offset that and reduce those effects.
Okay. Whoa, there's so much information and things we could change. So if I guess one of the things I'm wondering as we kind of start to wrap up is if in your clients, especially in your first responder clients, what are some of the things that are your first go-to things, that lifestyle changes in terms of nutrition that have been you found the most effective? And also, what are some of the things that those people have said, either pushback or myths that they believe that exist out there? So maybe that's a loaded question, but
Yeah,
what are
no,
some of
no,
the things you hear?
absolutely. And I
You
actually,
hear
yeah, I
or,
had to think on some of that. I was like, that's a fantastic question. Um, I would say the way I always approach it with patients, and some are great, they'll go, I'll do all three. Others, it's a step process.
yeah.
I go, let's look at, we need to reduce three things out of the diet. That's going to be gluten,
Mm.
dairy, sugar. Sugar encompasses all processed foods, everything, bad sugars. The hardest, I will tell you, probably for most, is going to be the bread and the sugar. So I always go, let's find one. Let's do the next 2 weeks, eliminate just one. And most people go, all right, dairy. I'm like, sweet, we'll eliminate the dairy. The biggest one I find that they notice the most is going to be bread and sugar. If I eliminate one of those first, usually bread, and go stop all bread. Other than you could do a a gluten-free bread if you have to, or a sourdough. But I'm like, if we're gonna do it, just stop it altogether. If they stop bread, that's the biggest one I see for brain fog and
Oh,
lethargic. It's not the gluten per se, it's the pesticides and chemicals they spray on the grains that are then made into our breads. We're ingesting those, and it's not good.
yeah, because
It's
there's
not
this
some
whole like gluten-free movement, and I've been on that train and off that train, and it's
it's
sometimes very confusing. And there's a lot
It's
of
the chemicals they're spraying on the grains to make said bread. So
okay,
people confuse that, and so it's all the glyphosates and I mean, just there's so much crap in that here in the States that we don't see overseas. So you can go to, I say, if you're going to Italy, eat all the pasta and breads you want. They don't have that crap in it, and you won't feel bad. But here, stay away from it. So gluten, it's easier to go gluten free because it's taking into the fact the grains that are made to produce those products.
right. So that's
Usually the
like your
gluten is a
normal
big one.
pastas and your normal breads, and
Yep.
pizza included in that.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Cauliflower crust,
Okay.
salt. Um,
And that'll help us
but
with brain fog. That's what you're saying.
the brain fog is usually the one I see a big response to on patients when we eliminate gluten. And then when we eliminate the sugar, that's usually the last one to go.
It's
We
hard.
eliminate, yeah, it is. It's a drug. It's just as addictive as cocaine. So we eliminate the sugar, then we start actually feeling the physiological sides of the aches go away, the pains, better digestion. I feel better mentally, physically. I sleep better. We're removing something that is so inflammatory to the body that now I'm allowing the body to recoup and rejuvenate and repair itself. It's not in this constant state of fight or flight. And so I always start with those three and go, let's just start
Hmm.
here. Pick one and we'll chip away at it. When all three are done, then I'll start migrating into we'll do some testing to figure out too, another thing that's out there, food allergy testing. You may be allergic or have a sensitivity, is a better term, for certain foods, and it's just because your body doesn't process it. So if you're eating, oh man, I love kale and spinach, and you're still feeling like garbage, and we do a food allergy test, sensitivity test, and you're like, gee, you can't have that because you have a sensitivity to it. We remove it, and then it's like, oh, imagine that. I start feeling better. So I think along with that, after we eliminate the main three culprits, look at doing some sensitivity testing to find out what else out there that we don't want to feed the body to cause an inflammation process to go against what we're trying to do. you need to do some testing on that. It's always good just to know. And then from there, I start migrating towards that Mediterranean diet, unless we're dealing with some type of physical ailment, mental ailment. And we may do a keto, we may do a carnivore or an anti-inflammatory diet of some sort. Cancer is a big one. First responders in cancer, we're going a vastly, very specific and hard regimen diet. But if we do that and keep from feeding the cancer, then we have a greater success at overcoming that. So it
So this is
depends on.
really interesting. There's one time that because sugar is kind of, I mean, I've got kids, right? The sugar is
Yep.
everywhere. We've got Halloween candy. Sometimes sugar is the way I learned how to express love, right? So oh, it's a birthday, I'm gonna bake something. Oh, it's a special occasion, I'm gonna make something. Oh, right, like I'm a good mom if I make a batch of cookies or something,
Right.
right? So I've had to counter that. And there have been times, there was one time in particular, and I followed this sugar detox diet. I think it was from Dr. Mark Hyman, who's an amazing um, functional med doc who does a lot of good stuff out there. And I did a 10-day sugar detox. And by the end, it first of all was hard, right? And then,
Yep.
but by the end, what I noticed, and people were like, how are you doing? What's it feel like? And I was like, my brain is sparkly. Like, I feel like my brain is like sparkling, like it's like
Yep.
glittery, like, oh, my brain feels really amazing. I'm just used to some other
Fog.
way, right? So I think now, and of course, I don't maintain that all the time, if
What would
ever.
I think? You do that. I think doing a detox, whether it be a metal detox, whether it be a parasite detox, that's another one too. People don't understand is if you have cravings, sometimes it's due to a parasitic infection. You may have a parasite, tapeworms, uh, um, to, there's a vast assortment of parasites we contract and have. If it gets out of balance, that's going to cause a craving of certain things, especially sugar, because that's what the parasites live off of.
Right. So there
So
could be like things like I know candida, which isn't a parasite,
absolutely.
but um, can make people crave sugars.
Yep.
Interesting.
And what I do is detox every now and then on certain things, depending on what you're dealing with. Not a bad thing. And then when you get back on it, modify. So in your case of you did the detox, what's a good healthy alternative for a sugar substitute? Honey.
Yeah.
Great for the body,
There's
lots of
not a really
minerals and
good
vitamins.
gummy bear substitute. That's
Not
not.
gummy bear, but then what I also found out, monk fruit. Monk fruit will not cause a glycemic spike. It's a
Okay.
plant-based sweetener, but it will not. It is diabetic safe. So I can have a diabetic patient and go, you know what? You can have monk fruit as your sugar substitute, and it will not cause a glycemic spike. So monk fruit's another one. I just tell people, the best way, honestly, is honey or just avoid it altogether. Get your sugar from fruits, a fruit source. There's so much sugar in that. Um, Use that as your sweetener. So you can use citrus and apples and mangoes and watermelon, you name it.
Yeah.
Use that as your flavoring if you have
Yeah.
to. But
All right.
um,
Because then right now I feel like
looking.
my joy is going out the window. Like, wait, so I can't eat gluten or sugar. So I'm going to basically be eating like an apple and a potato and a chicken, right? That's kind of what's happening.
But then we're gonna add, I look at it going nowadays with the internet, there's so many fantastic websites with recipes of the old days I lived off of when I was in college, did some bodybuilding and stuff as a personal trainer. I lived off of plain chicken breast and broccoli. That was it, 6 times a day. It was awful. Sweet
That sounds
potato,
terrible.
maybe on some of those.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you don't have to live like that. There are so many places to be found that offer healthy recipes to induce that. Hey, you want that sweetener? Hey, we can make a mango glazed sauce to go over the chicken and vegetables, and I'm gonna saute my vegetables in a little bit of coconut oil and
Okay.
add some. Uh, Man, we'll add some just something to it to give it a savory flavor. Again, there's so many recipes. I boil that down to if anybody goes, that's just bland. I'm like, now you're being lazy because there's
Right.
plenty of options out there. to find those great healthy recipes to where eating healthy doesn't have to suck. So,
Where do we go from here?
no,
So
you're not going to
what
be
do we
depressed.
yeah, where do we go from here now? So for people that are listening and feeling a little overwhelmed, and even I feel a little overwhelmed, even though I have read and heard some of these things a lot. Where do we start for
Baby
people listening
steps,
and want to make some?
baby steps.
Okay.
I look at, without coming to a nutritionist, dietitian, or functional nutrition coach, things you want to do on your own. I'll tell you right now, probably the biggest, eliminate those three. Eliminate gluten, eliminate your dairy. Now, dairy,
Baby step, please.
I look at like your milks.
Yeah.
Go with a coconut milk. Good cheese, like a good whole milk cheese, you're fine. You don't have to give up your cheese and crackers. Okay.
Great.
You can still have those and your grapes and all that good stuff. A good cheese is fine, but like pasteurized milk that you buy at the store, buy farm fresh or something of that nature. So elimination of your crappy dairy, gluten, just because of it's not the gluten itself, but the chemical compounds in it, and then sugar. If we do that, just work on that, and you will start noticing a difference in things on how you feel. Uh, I tell people try not to eat after, depending on obviously on your shift. If you're working, depending on how that shift works, your normal bedtime, like mine, I'm no longer on shift work, is 9 o'clock. I will not eat after 6. 6 o'clock is the latest I will eat to give my body the time to digest. And then by 9 o'clock, I'm feeling tired. I'm not hungry because I'm full, and I will sleep all night. So try to eliminate eating before bedtime. The worst thing
Okay.
you can do is I'm just going to have a bowl of something and then go to bed. Not good. So look at your eating habits of your portion sizes and how what are the times you're eating. First thing in the morning, I tell people when you get up, get in some protein. About 30 grams of protein within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up. Nuts will work, a couple of eggs, uh, some type of meat source or protein source. So get the protein in within an hour of waking. And then the rest of the day, again, modify what's going to work for you. I think nowadays it has gotten, unfortunately, I used to say it's simple, it's easy. It isn't. There's a lot of complexity of stuff, especially if we're looking at the body. If you can accomplish those three things, and then I would say on top of that, eliminate all energy drinks, period, you're ahead of probably 75% of this population.
Yeah.
Just doing that. From
And
there, if
those
you
are
want to get
baby steps, slowly.
yeah, baby
Right?
steps. And I tell people pick one of those three or four. Actually, we'll throw in the energy drinks over the next month. Work on reducing that, and then when you conquer that, sweet. Now take the night. What's the next one I want to conquer? Take the next one next month. Conquer that one, and just do it. We're looking at in most cases it's going to take 3 to 6 months for people to make a real change in their diet and their lifestyle.
Yeah.
Just do it in baby steps, and then you will find then that it is, once you do that, it's sustainable. And it's not to say that you can't go off and at a holiday eat all the garbage you want. It's Christmas. I'm going to eat stuff that aunts and uncles and grandmothers made that I know aren't a part of my diet. I'll eat it. And the beauty of it is, though, is once you get on this path and then you consume something you're not supposed to, your body will let you know. You will feel like crap literally the rest of the day and go, oh,
Or you just
it was
notice the
good,
taste.
but
You notice that like your mouth, your palate starts to adjust. And so if you eat something that's processed, you're like, what is this? Or something that has like
yeah.
corn syrup or a bunch of like the fake sugars and stuff is like, oh, this is so sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, the longer you're on it, the less cravings you'll have, and you're not susceptible to some of those cravings. Um, and then when you do eat it, you feel it. And I know for me, I feel like crap when I eat stuff like I'm not supposed to. And it's like, I'm good. I don't need to eat that again for the next 6, 12 months.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you can't splurge. And if you're going to splurge, take 1 to 2 days out of the week. Maybe it's the weekend, or maybe it's a Wednesday and a Saturday. Splurge, but stay within reason and don't go overboard. But it's okay to go, you know what, I'm gonna have that little piece of chocolate. Or you know what, man, I haven't had a cinnamon roll in 6 months. The kid's special occasion, you know what? Have a cinnamon roll. I'm not saying live this hardcore lifestyle. It's a balance, but the balance needs to be 90% really watching and eating well. The other 10% you can splurge and have stuff on. So I just tell people baby steps, and then from there get with a professional to, if you want to go down the rabbit hole of really perfecting a dietary lifestyle for you and your body, that's where you need to get with a professional, and we can look at everything holistically and find a lifestyle diet that suits you.
Nice.
The beauty is I'd say most of it's going to be that Mediterranean base with some tweaks in it. So it's not as hard as it sounds. It just takes discipline and it takes some perseverance and the willing to change. And once you get the ball rolling, I find that it's a lot easier to stick. And the beauty is if you work on your diet this way, you don't need Ozempic and that shit that just eats the body and causes issues. But you don't get these weight fluctuations of you
Mhm.
go on a juice diet. Oh, you may lose 10 pounds, probably water weight. Then when you get off of it, now you gain 15. And that's dieting that you and I know. That's what we typically see in the dieting world is they'll diet, lose weight, get off of it, gain even more back. If you stay on a consistent lifestyle diet, you don't have those fluctuations. It's consistent and you're going to feel better and you're not going that up and down roller coaster with your eating habits. Then you're going to feel better and think better and overall prevent exactly what we talked about with the mental stress of the job, cardiovascular disease, cancer prevention, all that stuff. We can nip it in the bud that way.
So much information. Clearly, you have learned a lot and are helping a lot of people make better food choices. I know I'm leaving this conversation re-inspired and motivated to tweak my diet even more because I'm a normal person. I like a piece of pizza and a
Yeah,
cookie.
that's okay. Nothing wrong with that.
So, yeah, thank you so much for all of this information. I know you could talk more about any one of these topics, and there's a lot to learn out there. So anybody that wants to follow up or look into things, are there resources? Are there things you would suggest looking at? I don't know, because the internet is sometimes often overwhelming around nutrition, especially.
Yeah, it is, and I take anything off of Google with a grain of salt. A lot of conflicting stuff. I would say get with a naturopathic or holistic practitioner. Get with a functional nutritionist or a dietitian, registered dietitian. For me, I'm a functional nutrition coach, so to me, it's about functional. How do I keep my body and mind in a functional state according to my lifestyle, with the stresses involved, physical and mental stuff. So it really is geared around the individual.
Yeah.
So just get with professionals, and we can. My job is to simplify things for you. That's what I try to do today. Although it's really hard to simplify years of data and what we know into about an hour, hour and a half. So get with those professionals and they're going to be able to simplify things for you, motivate you, encourage you, and give you a clear and concise pathway to success when it comes to changing our dietary habits. That's what I'd recommend on that. So, and they can find us on the links below. We'll have our info in there, but yeah, just vet people and look at what they're doing and look at testimonials. And to me, that doesn't lie. Testimonials of patients speaks volumes, and and start there as a resource after what we discussed.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise today.
Well, thank you for having me. And again, as always, love getting our heads together and just sharing some knowledge to help others. And um, that's all we got for today. Stay tuned. We got more on the agenda. And until next time, I'm Lee.
And I'm Margaret.
That's Margaret. And we're here to help you and stay safe and take care of yourself and take care of each other. Till next time.
Bye bye.
Bye.